All right. Good night, everyone. Welcome again. I am elated to welcome you all tonight to this webinar where we're going to talk about how to successfully respond to a speaker RFP. Now, for many of you, you're joining this by various mediums and you want to know how to respond to a speaker RFP, whether it's via a conference, a workshop presentation, or any other speaking engagements. Most conferences or other speaking engagements, they have some type of application, some type of form that they do ask individuals to fill out. And so today I'm going to share with you how you can be successful in completing and responding to a request for a full proposal. Are you all able to see the screen?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so I just want you all to drop in the chat. We're all friends here. Just want you all to let me know what your speaker level is. So are you you may be a beginning speaker, so that means you have not started out speaking in terms of getting speaking engagements or speaking at conferences. You maybe have had one or two and they've been on a smaller scale to the intermediate. So you've had quite a few, but you're looking to take it up a notch. You're looking to get more speaking engagements, speak at more conferences, other speaking opportunities, or you may be an experienced speaker and you just want to know, what other information is out there so that I can leverage what I already know and add value to whatever it is that I already. So if you will drop in the chat, whether you're a beginning, intermediate, or you're an experienced speaker, I would love to see where you all are. Intermediate. Thank you, Aaliyah. Thank you, Blair. Beginning. Thank you so much for sharing. Beginner. Great. And so when I was crafting this presentation, okay, experienced speaker, but want to go higher. So listen, I believe that everybody can provide value. So there may be something here that you all feel is necessary for everybody else to know. So although I am the host of this webinar, we all can provide value. And so if there is something that you want to share based on your experience or based on what you know, please feel free to drop it in the chat. Troy, especially since you're an experienced speaker, or there may be questions that you all have. I'm open to answering questions throughout as well. So thank you all so much for sharing that. Okay, so you are here, and I'm the host of this webinar, and I just want to share with you a little bit about who I am. So I am Mona Lee Belazaire. I am a vision strategist, and specifically, I help women, or I equip women, I should say, to confidently create and carry out their vision. But tonight, you're on this webinar because I want to share with you what I have learned over the past 15 years with my experience in nonprofit and in the federal government and how you can successfully respond to a speaker RFP. My experience is vast, as I mentioned, nonprofit and in federal, but I've had the opportunity to review at this point hundreds of workshop presentations, conference presentations, grant applications, contracts, RFPs for contract solicitations, you name it, I've reviewed it. And so I want to equip you tonight with the knowledge that you will need so that when you get an opportunity or you see a speaker opportunity, whether it's a conference or another event, and they're just asking you, what value are you going to bring? I want to be able to share with you how you can respond so that they can come back to you and say, yes, we want you. And so my experience, as I mentioned, is over 15 plus years. And so the value that I'm going to provide to you tonight is from that lens, from that view of I've seen this, I know what people want because I've been on that side and I want to be able to give you the information so that you can be successful in this journey. So, because we know that we have individuals that are on varying levels, I just want to set the tone for tonight's conversation and just provide some information because people may not know, and I don't want to take for granted that people do know this information. So, when it comes to a RFP, a speaker RFP, or just RFP in general, it is a request for a proposal. So it's a document that an organization posts to elicit a response. You really see it with contracts and conferences as well. When it comes to grant applications, it's more, they call it more of a funding opportunity announcement or a funding announcement. But specifically when it comes to a RFP, you see a request for proposal when it's related to contracts and for conferences. And that request includes all the detailed information that you will need in order for you to submit based on whatever it is that they're asking. So literally the RFP is your guide when you are completing an application to speak.
I wish I would have brought her on much earlier.
Let me see here. If you are not on mute, I do humbly ask that you just put yourself on mute just so that we can ensure that there's not any background noise and that everyone is able to hear. Thank you so much. All right. So when it comes to a request for a proposal, you typically see these things, and I'm going to go through everything because why this is, you'll see why this is important. And as I mentioned, I want to be able to share with you all specifically how you can be successful. Please note that there is no information on here that is not vital. Every single thing that is on this list, everything that I will share tonight is vital. Why? Because they put the information in an RFP for a reason. They want to see.
I am a sinner. Thank you for dying for me.
Let me just I'll just put folks on mute here. All right. I think we got that down back. All right, so let's try this again. So as I was saying, all of the requests for proposals that you will see, whether you may one day want to apply for a contract for the federal government or from another entity. And so every information, every word, every syllable that they put in there is for a reason. And so you want to pay attention to everything that they put in there. When it comes to a request for proposal, you'll see information related to the conference and the event. And so that really looks at just the overall conference or the event that they're putting on. They may provide some overview information, how long they've been running the conference, the purpose of the conference, and the like. They'll also talk about the conference event format, where it's being held. They'll also talk about some key outcomes. This is where you want to pay majority of your attention, and I'll go deeper into that as we go further along. This is where you want to provide really just zoom in specifically on these key outcomes, because this is where the conference hosts are saying, hey, at the end of this conference, this is what we want our attendees and our participants to walk away with. This is what we hope will happen at the end of this conference. Also, they talk about different topics. So there may be different topics that they want to address during this conference. And so this is where they will list those important dates, obviously the date of the event, also the due date for the RFP, you'll see there, speaker presentation and information. And I'll do a deep dive into all of these, but I just want to list them here so that you can see. And it may be a lot of information, but most requests for proposals, they're very short because they do get a lot of individuals that are vying for an opportunity to speak. And so they want to make sure that they don't have a lot that they need to review. So although there's a lot of information here, and you may have to provide a good amount of information, most requests for proposals are short when it comes to conferences. When it comes to contracts, it's a little bit longer. The speaker presentation information. So this is where you get to brag on yourself. This is where you get to talk about your skills and your expertise. The session schedule. So this is just a format for the entire conference. Start time, end time, the session formats. So whether what type of sessions and the formats for those sessions, any contact information and additional information that you will need. And as I mentioned before, all of this information is important to take note of. And so sometimes we may skip over the contact information, sometimes we may skip over the additional information, but you would be surprised at how many people miss certain things. Or I would get emails sometimes where people would say, where do I find this? Or, tell me more about this, or I don't understand this, when we've already laid it out in the request for proposal. So somebody's sending that to me, then, and I have like hundreds to review, then I'm going to say, okay, well, this person is not someone that's really detail oriented because they're not looking to see what the information that we've already provided. So let's take a deep dive into these specific areas. So when it comes to the conference event and information, as I mentioned, it's an overview of the conference. This is key because you want to know why they are putting on the conference and why they put it on the conference. What's the purpose of the conference? They also will provide background information, so they may share things such as, okay, how long the conference has been going on. You may also want to take a liberty to maybe go back into the conference archive and see the different themes for the conferences in the past. Sometimes they'll also post the workshops that they have accepted in the past, and that will give you an idea of the type of things that they're looking for, whether it's workshop presentations or talks or whatever that they're looking for. And so the background information is very key. And as I mentioned, and I'm going to keep saying this because I've seen it so many times over the amount of times that I've reviewed, even grant applications, you'll be surprised. People miss the smallest things. And so I just want to share that all this information is key. You want to know, as someone who is submitting for an RFP, the purpose of the conference, because then you're going to speak to that in everything that you do. They're hosting this conference for a purpose. And so, how does what you are submitting, how does your topic, how does your objectives, how does what you are presenting really match or is in line with the purpose of the conference? Key outcomes that I mentioned earlier, this is where you want to zoom in majority of your attention. So when it comes to key outcomes, the conference hosts are specifically looking at what type of experience are you going to provide for their attendees? What type of value are you going to provide? What type of knowledge are you going to come and share? And how is your workshop presentation or your keynote speech,
And any way I can.
your keynote speech? I'm sorry, Zoe. Can you go? Can you put yourself on mute, please? Thank you. How the information that you are going to provide, how can they readily apply that once they leave out of there? We've all been to conferences and workshops, right? And you leave there either one of three ways, I would say. You leave there overwhelmed. You're like, wow, that's a lot of information. I don't know where to start from. You leave with no information. You're like, man, I could have really spent my time somewhere else. Or I could have gone to another conference presentation. And then you'll be really bummed if it's a conference and the sessions are not that they're running concurrently. So then also too, you go to conferences and you're like, okay, this was a great conference. I got some information. I can really readily apply this. This is what the conference hosts are looking for. They're looking for what type of experience you're going to provide to their attendees based on the key outcomes. So the key outcomes are, as I mentioned earlier, what is it that they want their attendees, the participants of the conference, to leave with? The knowledge that you're going to provide, and then how can they readily apply these as well. Now, when we think about the conference or workshop presentation or whatever other speaking engagement, you could also be looking to facilitate a particular workshop, whatever it is. The conference or event format is also key. So you'll see the types of sessions. They'll list out the types of sessions. So that could specifically be whether it's a session, a morning session, afternoon session, a keynote session, a plenary session. You'll see the types of sessions that they have, and they list out all of those because when you begin to respond to the RFP, you will need to choose what it is that you are applying for or what it is that you're submitting for. If you're submitting for a keynote, if you're submitting for a talk, if you're submitting for a workshop, you're submitting for a plenary session, you're submitting specifically for a panel discussion. Those are the things that you will see when they talk about the type of session. Also, they'll list the schedule, right? So they'll share specifically with you in the RFP the schedule. So that really speaks to the time slots that they have. So that's helpful for you because if you need to travel to go to the conference, you'll need to know, okay, because sometimes what they will do is they'll have the keynote probably in the morning. They'll have an opening keynote, they'll have a closing keynote, and then they'll mix between plenary sessions and then workshop sessions in between those days. And so that's helpful for you so that you can know schedule wise as you're applying, okay, well, I need to, I want to do a workshop, so I need to make sure that I take time off and all those things. So that's helpful for you in that sense. And then also the session offerings. This is where, again, they really talk about the different types of sessions, but they'll specifically say, okay, well, we're offering it at this time or this time. And then also you'll get to see whether or not, and sometimes depending on how they run the conference, the sessions the sessions will run simultaneously. So this is where you want to stand out too, because most times, because a lot of these conferences are big conferences, they're running multiple sessions simultaneously. And so you want to ensure that whatever it is that you are going to talk about, that people actually want to come. So it's not enough that you get accepted to speak at the conference. You actually want people to show up to your session, because if you're looking for feedback, then you want a good amount of people to respond to the feedback and say, hey, you did a really good job. I love what you said here. Those types of things. I'm just gonna pause here to see if anybody has any questions. And if you're getting some value from this at this point, I just want you to drop in the chat value. If you're getting value from this, if you're like, okay, I'm tracking with you, Mona Lee. This sounds good. I'm picking up some information. Let me know if you're getting some value by dropping value in the chat. And any questions as well. All right. Great, great. I see all the value dropping. Okay. Okay, great question, Blair. So I am going to actually address that at the end. So if you hang tight, I'm going to talk about that right at the end, because I know there are quite a few folks that did ask that specific question. So I'm going to make sure that I address that at the end. So when it comes to topics, this is where the conference host tells you, listen, this is what we want you to talk about. This is what we want you to stick to. So, for example, if you are an educator and you are attending a conference around after school programs, or if you're attending a conference specifically for math teachers, right? They will say, okay, well, we want you to specifically talk about curriculum and instruction. We want you to talk about how to advocate for your students, or we want you to talk about how to improve communication, or math, or whatever the case may be, to the district, whatever it is. I'm not an educator, but I'm just throwing out some examples there on topics. My background is in public health and social work, so I know a lot of the public health or healthcare conferences or health related conferences. You'll see varying topics. And then also, to I'll pause here to say that it's important as a speaker and as you're looking for conferences, and this is just by the way, that you look for conferences, not just only in your discipline. So if you're in public health, don't just look at public health conferences. Also look at tech conferences. Also look at conferences that really intersect with the work that you do. So when it comes to public health, when it comes to education, social work, any of these other areas, right? We can think about data. So any conferences that really speak to any tech conferences as another way for you to look at, because there's always intersections between the work that you do and other disciplines. If you're in healthcare, the need for cybersecurity to protect people's data, all of those things. So don't just stick to, when you start to look for speaking opportunities, only associations and professional organizations in your particular industry and discipline. You want to broaden your horizon and look at other aspects as well, because believe it or not, people are looking for opportunities for people to bring innovation and different ideas into their space. And so if you're in a particular discipline, you can look at other conferences as well, and that will give you an idea of where you can speak, and what you can speak to based on your expertise. So going back to topics, this is where the presenter, this is where the conference host says, speaker, presenter, this is what we want you to talk about. This is what we want you to address in your proposal. Now, session formats, this is key for you when you are completing the application. And like I said, you will see all of this information or some resemblance of this in an RFP. Most RFPs are very standard. They don't really ask too much, like I mentioned, but they really provide just the general information so that you can put enough in there so that they can say, okay, I believe that this will really provide value to our attendees. So most session formats you can find in three categories. One is talks. And so talks are much shorter. You typically find them less than 10 minutes, and they are solo in nature. So that's you going and you're speaking on a particular topic in front of an audience. And it could also be a smaller audience as well, but you're going and you're talking to them. There's also keynotes as well, but keynotes are for to a larger to a larger or to a larger I'm sorry to a larger population. So that's typically at the beginning of the conference. But when it comes to talks, or you're talking about like a speaker RFP, the talks are much shorter. They're, like I said, less than 10 minutes. And they really are solo in nature. And you're speaking to a particular topic. And so you'll typically find that, when they're shorter like this, there's not a lot of information that you get to share. And so they're really looking for you to really be bullseye in what you're saying. You really need to hit the points. You need to be succinct with your points. You need to be concise in what you're saying because you only have a limited amount of time to share what it is that you want to share. Workshops you typically find will be around 60 to 75 minutes. I haven't really seen them longer than that, but 60 to 75 minutes you'll see workshops. And so those are really where they are looking for you to bring in any learning styles. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I go into actually applying for or submit or filling out the paperwork. So workshops, they're much longer. They're 60 to 75 minutes. And this is where you get an opportunity to display your skills, your talents, your expertise. But what they're really looking for when it comes to workshops is they're looking for your ability to engage the audience. Panel discussions, most of us are familiar with panel discussions, but it's probably a group of 3 to 5 individuals. There are set questions at most times, or they can typically organize it where you have to present on a particular topic at a particular time. So if it's 5 of you all, you may go first, and you have to present. Present your particular area, or your particular talk, or whatever it is that you're going to say, and then somebody else goes, and then there's questions afterwards, or sometimes they'll take questions after your presentation, but typically they leave questions afterwards, and they'll say this question is for Mona Lee, this question is for Zoe, and they do it that way. And so this is helpful for you. So I'm sharing all of these because it helps to, one, think about what you may be most comfortable with, but it also helps you to know what areas you would like to stretch yourself in. And so if you're someone, you're like, okay, well, I can talk to small groups, but I've never really done panel discussions. I don't know how to leverage other, additional information, or even share my time with other people. Or I would like to stretch myself to a workshop, right? Like I've done small talks, I've been on panel discussions, but I would really like to own the room and really show people what I can provide. Workshops may be a way for you to do that. The speaker information, typically they ask a bio. So they'll ask for a bio, or they'll ask, how are you well positioned to really speak to this audience, or what value are you going to provide? And so this is where, like I said earlier, you get to brag on yourself. So this is where I urge you not to be cheap. Don't be cheap with who you are. If you have 25 years, 15 years, all the skills, the soft skills, hard skills, whatever kind of skills that you have, as long as it speaks to the outcomes or speaks to the topic of the conference, put it all in there. Maximize the amount of words that they give you. So this is where you talk about your background, your personal and professional background, any experience that you have. So that experience could be your work experience, volunteer experience, all of it matters. And so this is where you get an opportunity to really share all this information, right? And then your expertise as well. So for example, you may be an educator. I think education is probably a little bit easier for me to share. So you may be an educator, but in education, you are a math teacher. In education, you do curriculum instruction, right? So, or you may be in the restaurant industry, but in the restaurant industry, you're in sales, or in the restaurant industry, you're in a chef. So your experience is in education, your experience is in the restaurant industry, but your expertise may be as a math teacher, your expertise may be as a curriculum specialist, or your expertise may be as a chef. And so this is where you get to say, I have 15 plus years of this, but specifically, I have served as a whatever for this amount of time, and this is really what I can bring. So this is where you get to go back and look at the key outcomes of the workshop, of the conference, and you're tying your experience and your expertise back to these key outcomes, because they want to know that the people that we're bringing in can really add value and can speak to the work that we're talking about, right? So it doesn't mean that if you see something and you're like, okay, well, I don't really have all the expertise and the knowledge in that. That's not always the case. This is where you get, this is where you get to digging, right? You get to look at, okay, specifically what type of workshops they have admitted in the past, or what type of speakers they have admitted in the past. And most times they keep all of that information, or sometimes you'd be surprised that they even do share that they do share that information with you, or on the website, so that you can get an idea of what they're looking for even before you start to fill out the information. So you're um you're not filling it out if you're not sure, or if you really don't meet the criteria. Now, just some additional information here when it comes to dates, information. The due date is always important. You just want to look and make sure that you're submitting it. I always say to look at the time zone as well. So don't take for granted that because you are on Eastern time or Central Standard Time, that that they will be doing the same, or that sometimes they may leave that out, or sometimes they may forget to put it on there. You can always email them and say, I see that the deadline is 11:59 p.m., but it doesn't say what time zone. You may want to ask that, but just make sure that you look at the due date. And if there's a particular time, that you look at the time zone as well. You can always ask that. I always say over ask, as long as the information is not there, but always ask, because the thing is that, we live in a global society. And so if you get an opportunity to apply to a conference in Ireland or a conference in China, these countries are 12 hours, 6 hours ahead of us, right? Or African countries. You may want to look at a conference in Nigeria or South Africa. They're a few hours ahead of us. And so they may do it in their time zone. And so you will need to know whether or not, what time that is for you. And I even suggest that you do yourself a favor and you submit your RFP at least a day in advance. So you're not, I mean, unless you find it like, like really soon, you don't get a chance to really, fill it out or submit it ahead of time. But if you can and you can prepare ahead of time, submit it early, because a lot of these conferences, they look at them as they come in sometimes. I know when we used to review on the federal level, we would wait until all of them came in, because we needed to divide among people and all of those things. Yes. But there are sometimes, because I was one of the individuals that was responsible for training and technical assistance, I would see all of the workshop presentations come in. So I would be nosy and I would go and see, well, let me see what these people are submitting. Let me see, like what they're saying. Let me see if we're getting a good crop of people, are really fruitful. Like, are we going to really have a really good conference this year? Or really going to, really be struggling to find people who are really going to provide value? And I've seen it where there are people that have submitted for, to present at conferences, and we're like, okay, this is really going to be a good group. They're really looking, to drive innovation. They're really bringing some new ideas. They're really going to be some fruitful conversations. Our grantees can really learn from this. And there are times when I'm just like, yeah, this is really going to be a challenging one, just because the information that they're providing is really not going to be of value. So you always want to make sure that you are looking at that. Also, the event date, that's important for you, so you can, think about travel and all of that. I am of the stance and of the disposition that you'll get accepted, right? So there, for me, there is no such thing as, unless somebody says otherwise, unless they come back and say otherwise. If I submit for something, my stance is that I'm gonna get it. And so book your flight, look at the flights, look at your flight arrangements, all of that. And then contact information and additional information as well. I also always look at the additional information, because this is where they may just throw something on the end and say, is there anything else that you would want for us to know? And I always say, answer all of the questions. Don't leave anything blank, even if it's something as simple as, is there anything else that you want the reviewers to know about you? Because anything that you did not get a chance to say in your bio or description about yourself, this is where you can get an opportunity to say that. Any questions? Feel free to drop any questions in the chat. Okay, so when you're responding to the RFP, here are some questions that I want you to consider. One, what problem are you solving? Most times they're hosting conferences, yes, because they want to share information, but they want to know that people are actually solving problems and there's solutions that you have that you can provide to the individuals that are coming to them. Because anybody that goes to a conference, they're going there to increase their knowledge. They're going there because there's something that they may want to change, something that they want to implement, something that they want to do, and they're trying to see what other people are doing. And so you want to think about what problem are you trying to solve? What solution do you provide? And that solution can be as in your experience or your expertise you're bringing to the table, or something that you actually have done. So this is where you want to begin to think about as you're crafting your and developing your RFP. What is it that you have done? That's why I said there's no experience or there's no expertise that you should not consider. All of it is very important and very important and is valuable. Also think about what makes you well positioned to speak on this topic. As I mentioned earlier, they'll state the different topics, even if it's an overarching organization and they have a particular conference. Most conferences, they have a theme for that year. And from that theme, they will specifically say, okay, these are the topics that we want to focus on this year. They don't focus on the same topics every year. They may have one or two that they always focus on because they always want to make sure that it really speaks to the mission, the vision, and the value of the organization. Yes, but the organization is always at liberty to say, you know what, we're seeing a change in our industry as it relates to AI. And so we want to see what's out there, concerning AI in education or AI in the restaurant industry, or we've been seeing and we're starting to see a lot of ramp up, in the finance industry around a particular topic. And so we want to pivot because we want to see what other people are doing, right? They're all doing this so that they can see the value that you can provide. So you want to be able to say and speak to what makes you well positioned to speak to this topic. And then what kind of impact do you want to leave with the participants? So when you are building and crafting your RFP, really consider from the beginning what type of impact and experience that you want the attendees when they come into the room. When someone puts their eye on your RFP, similar to a resume, they only have a short amount of time to review this information. And so you want to ensure that they're keywords that they are seeing. So this we're going back to the key outcomes, the topics, the mission, the value of the organization. All of this is really important because you want to speak to the RFP. And I'll say that again because that's really, if I could say one statement, speak to the RFP. So you want to talk about the kind of impact and think through the kind of impact that you want to leave with the participants. So just I always think about the five senses and if the five senses are applicable. So what do I want them to see? What do I want them to hear? What do I want them to experience, via touch? So you could ensure that your materials really speak to the kinesthetic and tactile learners. So you're putting that in your RFP as well. You're saying that we will, by the end of this presentation or this session, and I'll talk a little bit more about that structure as well too. They will leave with a guide that will help them to implement this particular program when they go back to the classrooms or when they go back to the restaurant or whatever the case may be, right? So you want to think through from the beginning what type of impact you want to leave with the participants, what type of experience that you want them to have. And really just think about yourself. We've all been to conferences. So what is it that you've liked about presentations? And what is it that you've not liked about presentations? There's really no difference most times when it comes to conferences in feedback and experience that most people have. So I most likely, if I don't like a workshop or majority of people don't like a workshop, most likely many people won't like it for the same reason because it wasn't engaging. It didn't really give me any additional knowledge. Like I could have Googled it. So you want to make sure that you're providing information that individuals can't readily Google. Also think through the intended audience. And so when you are crafting your speaker RFP, most times in the RFP, they will say on the conference website, or they'll even specifically note it on the RFP that this conference is for this particular group of people. So it's not going to be for everybody. So they may, and even if it's for a particular discipline or a particular industry, they will probably even cause you to choose who this is specifically for. So in my experience, I've seen where we've said, okay, well, yes, this is for a particular group. So it will be for individuals that are in public health, and they may be in maternal and child health. Or my background is also in adolescent sexual reproductive health. So anybody who has a public health degree can come and talk, right? But we need individuals who have specific experience. So we would begin to list, okay, who are the individuals that work in maternal and child? Who are the individuals that have that we will typically see, or the disciplines that we'll typically see when it comes to adolescent reproductive health? So we would see doctors, we would see nurses, we would see what do you we would see health educators, right? So though we would specifically say these are the people that this conference or this workshop is for, because we don't want any and everybody to submit just to come to a workshop. Because somebody could say, okay, well, yes, I'm in education and I can teach to that, and yes, you could know how to develop a curriculum, but do you have expertise when it comes to developing a curriculum for young people or for adults? And so yes, it's good to ensure that you're crossing sectors, but you want to think through the intended audience. Who is this specifically for? Also, consider the learning styles. When you're completing and you're crafting your RFP, think through the different learning styles. You want to ensure that you're really speaking to the auditory learner, you're speaking to the visual learner, you're speaking to the kinesthetic and tactile learner. So that is the individuals that they touch in order to learn. And it doesn't necessarily mean that everything that you do in the workshop presentation really has to speak to that. So if you don't have anything for the kinesthetic and tactile learner, right, you may just say, okay, well, you know what, just to ensure to create a really safe environment, and an environment where people feel calm, right? So for example, you're applying for a mental health workshop, you're providing a space for them to feel calm. You may have one of those squishy balls. You may say, we'll have squishy balls at the, I don't know what they're called. I think they're called stress balls. Yes. So you may have one of those at the table just to ensure, that people can feel calm, because those things we used to put them on our work, at our tables all the time, and people will always do something with them, whether it's the Play-Doh or all this stuff, because we're all big kids at heart. So you can always even say those types of things, because they want to make sure that you're creating a good environment as well. And then also too, it's also really great for you to mention for those who learn by experience. So case studies, role plays are always a big hit. So if there's some way that you can do that, whether you spend time as a breakout or you ask for volunteers, and you're putting this all in the work, you're putting this, you're thinking about this as you're planning, right? But you're thinking about this just to place it in there. So you may not be able to go in detail in the RFP, but you can say, we'll incorporate role plays and case studies from most recent experiences, whether it's experiences that you have, or you can always find case studies online, or you can also pull something from the news, something that people can most likely relate to, that speaks to your discipline. There are myriad of ways that you can really speak to the learning styles. So even if you're someone that you're not necessarily familiar with adult learning strategies or adult learning theories, what conference hosts and reviewers of these applications are looking for are individuals who are engaging and will bring engaging activities. And then also, finally, use of action verbs. So most times RFPs will ask for you to provide outcomes or learning objectives. And so your learning objectives need to be filled with action verbs. So you will, you can set it up as a SMART goal. If you're not familiar with SMART goal, you can structure your objective that way. You can make it specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So you can say by the end of this session, that's the time bound, the participants will know how to relate, or they will evaluate, or they will activate. So you're trying to find strong words. So increased understanding, Yes, that's good, but you want to limit the increase of understanding because most times your intended audience is coming with some type of knowledge, or sometimes they're coming in with more knowledge. They're looking for something that they can implement, right? So implement is another word. So you want to use strong action verbs. So you make it very specific. By the end of this session, the participants will do that, and you want to make sure that it's achievable. So that means that they can actually do it. So you don't want to say something that's outlandish and at the end of the day they really can't do it, or it's not realistic. That means it's not something that they're able to do, right? So for example, if you are in education and you're in a are you're an educator and you're in a space, right, where the people like, sorry for a second, you're in communities where there's not a lot of funding that goes to schools. Somebody's going to come in there, they're going to tell you, listen, we got $1 million to implement this project. You're going to be like, okay, already you probably will shut down because like, okay, well, we can't do that in the communities where we are. So you want to ensure that there's nothing wrong with you saying that, but you have to understand that there may be individuals, your intended audience is coming in with vast experience, and they're coming in from different with different lenses. So you want to ensure that you really think through, and this is why your expertise and experience comes in. So because you really want to think through, how is it that we can ensure, how is it that I can ensure that whatever it is I'm presenting, that they actually can do it when they go back to their home base. I'm going to pause here for any questions. Any questions? I'm also going to pause here to see if you can just drop in the chat one thing that resonates with you so far. One thing that resonates with you so far. One thing that you're like, I love this. I think I can implement this now. I'm ready to really apply for this conference. One thing that is resonating with you. Okay, utilize the SMART goals and use strong action verbs that are achievable. Yes. Considering the different learning styles. That is key. Using case studies or role plays based on current events. Yes. People are going to want to get up, they're going to want to move around. Learning styles and incorporating tools that appeal to different types of learners. Yes, the learning style for me as well. And you see, as you can see, even in the chat, this to fill out the whole RFP. That is also key. So you see, these things resonate with us, and this is why I always tell people, don't look too far from yourself. Don't look too far from yourself. When you're filling out anything, especially a speaker RFP, think to yourself, what is it that I would want in a conference? When I go to a conference, what do I want? What do I want to see? What do I want to experience? I promise you, that's what the people want too. And so don't think too far from yourself. That's going to be helpful for you. Yes, and using the news articles or role playing. That's really key because that is an opportunity for individuals to connect, make connections. That's how you build relationships, and that's also a part of conferences as well too. You go to a conference so that you can meet people, that you can network, that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can leverage as well too. This is where people get an opportunity to share their varying experiences as well. So that is something that's key. Okay, I know you all asked, many of you asked, where can you find speaking opportunities? So number one, Google. You can literally go and Google and you can say conferences for whatever industry, conferences on cybersecurity, conferences on healthcare, conferences on women in healthcare, conferences on healthcare and tech, conferences on education and tech. You can literally go in Google and just literally, if you want to speak to women, you can just type in Women's Conferences 2024, and you'll see a list of conferences all across the world that come up. One of the things that you want to do also is that you just want to prepare yourself to track those RFPs that you have submitted or those conferences that you plan to apply for. So you can get a simple Excel spreadsheet, put in one column the name of the conference, the link, whether you applied or not, all of those things, just so you can keep track. Professional organizations as well. If you're not a part of a professional organization, so that also includes associations, but most disciplines and most industries have a professional organization attached to it. And also, most industries have professional organizations for specific um for specific disciplines in a broader discipline. So for example, you there are tons of conferences on education, but there are conferences that are specifically for math teachers, for curriculum specialists. There are tons of conferences in public health, but there are conferences specific to maternal and child health. There are conferences specific to adolescent sexual reproductive health. There's epidemiology. So there are tons of professional organizations, and then even in those professional organizations, they have workshop opportunities, because what you'll find with most associations and professional organizations, they have monthly or quarterly workshops, and they're always looking for speakers. So you will find that also too. And I'll go down to state and county organizations. For example, for bar associations, and this is where I always I'm repeating myself because I want you to hear me, that many of these associations and organizations, they're looking for other things outside of their discipline as well. So if you're someone that is in the mental health space, or you're someone who is in the medical space, right, you can certainly apply to speak to the bar association, because lawyers need mental health too, right? Lawyers need to know how to do self-care. Lawyers you may, if you're an educator or you're a curriculum developer, you may have a lawyer that wants to develop a curriculum for law students. So I really encourage you to think outside of the box when you're looking for speaker opportunities. Do not limit yourself to just your discipline. Think about bar associations, think about medical associations, right? There's a high suicide rate of residents. All like there's nothing that you cannot find out there. I promise you, people, all of it is out there. State and county organizations, most states and most counties have chambers of commerce, and most chambers of commerce, they have monthly workshops, and they're not just on business. If you think about business or finance industry on a whole, there's so many things that go on in that industry that it would behoove you to just look and see, okay, well, what types of workshops have they put on in the past? And they, some of them do pay. And when it comes to the speaking opportunities, they typically do say whether or not they pay or not. You can always ask if they have a stipend, or if you work for a company and they're open to you presenting, you can see how the organization can, your job where you work can sponsor for you to go to this conference, right? Because you can say, okay, I'm going to this conference. I want to present on the work that we're doing. Is there any professional development funds available for me to do that? So that's another way for you to leverage that. LinkedIn is also a great avenue. You can go on LinkedIn, you can type in, similar to Google, the different conferences. You can type in, you can search, and I love LinkedIn because you can search by post, you can search by a particular person. So once you type in something, it gives you the option for post, it gives you the option for events. And so LinkedIn is another great way. But I'm going to say again, do not cut yourself short on where you can find speaker opportunities. It also will be good for your local county government. All of these places, they do workshops all the time. I know I live in Montgomery County in Maryland. And so even in Montgomery County, they have boards in the county. So the whole entire county is filled with different boards, and there are different boards for different things. There are boards for the elderly, elder care. There's boards specifically just for children. There's boards specifically for rent. So individuals that are renting in the county, and all of these boards, they need trainings and they need professional development. So do not cheapen yourself out of what you can do. I'll give you another example that I think may be helpful. So pregnancy, I work at a pregnancy resource center, and someone wanted to do a, not wanted to do, but they have an assignment, a global health assignment in global health. And my background is in public health. So I was like, okay, no problem. I'll help you to figure it out. And so we were able to come up with a product, with a deliverable. And I said to her, asked her, I was like, what's your background? And she's like, my background is in curriculum development and training. And I'm like, listen, do this product, and you can literally take this product and you can build an entire curriculum around this topic and around this product, and you can go to the different pregnancy resource centers and you can sell this product. And so all of this speaking is not just speaking to people at conferences. Speaking is such a large, it's a $1 billion industry, a $1 billion industry. So when I tell you to think outside of the box, please think outside of the box. Curriculum development, training, workshops, people need it all. And then also too, as you're looking at the news, as you're looking at other the things that are going on in the world, think about how your industry fits into that, because like I said, people are looking for solutions and they're looking for somebody to be able to provide solutions. Your relevance is really determined by the solutions that you provide. The moment you stop providing solutions, you're not relevant, right? And so you'll just be another body. And so if you really want to continue to be relevant, and people will pay for your relevance, right? We pay for relevance every day, believe it or not. And so that's a free game and on the side. But think about how you can provide a solution. Think about how you can go into an industry with something that's not there, right? I know the work that I was just telling you about. I'm with the young lady who were helping to develop the product, the deliverable. That's not there. I know that's not there. So I'm like, listen, you can go there, you can shop this, and even if somebody says no, you can actually go to colleges of public health and you can shop this as well. So you don't need to stop only at the pregnancy resource centers. You can shop this to colleges of public health. You can shop this to medical schools. Why? Because it's such a topic that's well needed and people aren't talking about it, people are not thinking about it, right? So I encourage you to think outside of the box. Crystal asks, what is the average rate or range you've seen speakers paid for conferences? So actually, Crystal, that really depends on the budget of the conference and the speaker. So keynote speakers are typically paid the most. Workshop presenters, and the plano, like plenary, solo and keynote, they'll get paid the most. Workshops, not so much, to be honest. It's very rare that I've seen a conference where they pay the individuals for the workshop. So if you're looking to do speaking specifically, and you want to be paid at conferences, positioning yourself for keynotes is one way to do that, or any type of solo. That's where you can probably leverage it. But one way to there are two ways you can think about this. They may provide a stipend, so they may not pay out, for you, but they may provide a stipend in some way. For example, if it's an international conference, they do want people to come from all across the world. So that's where you probably will find people will be willing to give you a stipend for it. That's one way. But also you can look at it from an experience standpoint as well, right? So this is where if you're a beginner speaker, you can begin to just build your confidence for speaking. However, I am of I'm of the dispensation. We all carry experience and expertise. So you can always say no if you're like, listen, I can be paid for what it is that I'm doing. If you really want to get into speaking, then you can, or paid speaking, you can pitch different organizations or different companies as well. But that's something completely different. And I can talk a little bit more about that as well. You're welcome, Crystal. But like I said, they'll share all this information on the website or in the RFP. But definitely this is an opportunity for you to grow, an opportunity for you to sharpen your skills. But most of us here, we have expertise, so you can look in other arenas if you want to be paid specifically for speaking. Any other questions? Anybody has any comments, anything anybody would like to share? Is there something of value anybody's like would like to share, that would be helpful for the rest of the audience? I think that's key as well too, because I know we're coming in here with varying experiences, and so I want to make sure that we give time for that as well. All right, so my final thing to say to you all tonight is this: speak to the RFP. What they're asking is exactly what they're asking. Most times it's not ambiguous. Most times you don't need to guess what they're saying. Most times the information that they're asking for is there. what you probably will need is somebody to probably help you to pull it out if you're not sure. But speak to the RFP. What they're asking you for is what they're asking you for. No more, no less. And then when you talk about speaking to the RFP, ensure that you're really connecting the dots and really bringing alignment with who you are, your expertise, your experience, and the key outcomes of the conference or the speaking engagement, right? So that's where you yourself, what you bring, but then also what are the key outcomes. And as I mentioned earlier, thinking about the intended audience and the learning styles and all of that, but also thinking about what kind of impact and experience you want them to have. I do want to share with you that I am doing something new concerning this. I am launching an RFP review. And so that is where I have the opportunity to work with you one on one and bring my expertise in doing this. And so it's comprised of a 60-minute one on one consultation on responding to a speaker RFP. So this is where you would come on in a Zoom platform just like this, and we would go over the speaker RFP. You'd send it to me ahead of time. I'd look over it, and we would walk through the RFP. Would literally go through, answer the questions, specifically ask, answering and asking, okay, what is it that they're looking? What is it that they're asking for? What are the key outcomes? What are your expertise? And then we will a craft a speaker RFP, a response that really helps you to be successful, right? Because that's the whole point of this. When you do this RFP review with me, you get access to the recording of the consultation for 7 days. So you can go back, you can replay, you can rewind, you can do whatever it is that you want to do with the recording. And then you also have access to me or to communicate with me via Voxer for 7 days. So 7 days from the time that we have the consultation, then this is an opportunity for you to say, hey, Mona Lee, I'm filling this out and I got stuck. I don't know where to go. And literally, I'll just respond to you via Voxer. You can send me back a message and we'll just do this back and forth until you get it right for the 7 days. So I'm providing this to you because I want to make sure that one, I'm providing you with value. And two, when you see something come up, a speaker RFP come up, you can be like, okay, I know I went on the webinar, I have this information, but I need just some additional help. And with my expertise and with what I've shared with you, literally, I know what these people are asking for. I've seen these things thousands of times and I've seen it with different lens. And so the thing is, it's not just conference, it's not just workshops, but it's even also grant applications as well. And while I'm not doing that, it's still the same lens that we look at it with, because we just want to know, can the people answer the questions that we ask? Are they speaking to what and what type of innovation and ideas? So that's where the strategy as well comes in, because we can strategize how do you ensure that you're speaking to the key outcomes, and we can pull out some of your expertise and your experience that will help you to meet this particular need. I'm going to drop the link if you are interested and you want to sign up today, or if you want to sign up when you have the opportunity, you find a speaker RFP. I'm going to drop. Is there something else that you may be interested in Troy? Let me know. Okay. Let me know if there's something else that you may be interested in. I do have experience in other areas, and so I am willing to, to work with you if there's something else that you're looking at. But I just want to make sure. I'm gonna stop sharing just for a minute here, just so I can pull up that link. Um, but you just but if, yeah, like I said, if there's something, Troy, that you're specifically looking for, uh let me know. You can email me and let me know that. But go ahead and click on that link if you're interested. Go ahead and sign up. I'm willing to help, willing to work with you. I want to make sure that you are successful when you are completing these speaker RFPs. So the thing about these things is that they're simple, right? Most of the times they are one pagers. But because of the multitude of people that are applying for these slots, you want to make sure that your RFP submission stands out. Any questions? Any questions? Oh, and I forgot to mention also, I think I mentioned it earlier, but I'll repeat it again, that you typically see the same standard and format across all of conferences and workshop presentations. So you certainly don't need to think, okay, well, if I'm applying to an international conference, are they going to ask the same question? They typically ask the same questions. They just ask it in a different way, but they're still trying to get at the same things. So make sure that, don't be shy or coy with going outside of your box and applying for other opportunities. Any questions? We're right at 4 minutes after 8. I'm glad this was helpful. Thank you. I hope this was helpful for everyone. I really hope you understand how to respond, how to successfully respond to an RFP. Like I said, I've been doing this for years, done it for years. And even now that I'm outside of the federal government, I still serve as a reviewer. So I've seen it all, folks. So if you really want to work with me, please click on the link and let's get started in working on getting your speaker RP. And this is not the only time this offer will always be available. So if you want to work with me, you missed the link, you don't have the link, feel free to send me an email and we can connect that way. Okay, thank you all. All right. Well, this is the end of the presentation. Like I said, I hope I know this was of value to you because you're saying that it's value. So I won't say I hope this is of value to you. Let me know if you have any questions. Please feel free to reach out to me, and we'll connect. For those of you who are interested in going to the next step, and for me to work directly one-on-one with you on getting your speaker RFP successfully submitted. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful night. It was a pleasure serving you in this capacity.
Amen. God bless you. God bless you, Mona.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you.